The prairie winds howled that evening, carrying the dust of a merciless land. Near the edge of a cottonwood grove, a young woman stood bound to a tree, wrists cut from the tight ropes. Her dress was torn, her face bruised. Across her back, carved crudely into her flesh, were the hateful words, Comanche Lover. She had been punished not for a crime, but for kindness, for daring to share bread with starving people. The men of her town called her a traitor. Now under the bleeding sunset, she sagged against the bark, left for wolves and vultures. Her name was Eliza Hart. Once the daughter of a respected shopkeeper, she had always been known for her gentle heart, but in 1800s frontier towns, mercy could be branded as betrayal. When she gave food to a wandering Comanche boy, the men spat at her. When she stood against their cruelty, they turned on her. That morning, a mob dragged her from her home, ignoring her cries. They tied her to the tree at the edge of the prairie as punishment. They thought fear would silence her. Instead, it marked her forever. Eliza whispered, "God, let me endure." The night grew colder, the sky blazing with stars. Coyotes yipped in the distance. Eliza shivered, her body weak, her wounds raw. Each sound made her think of the Comanche raids that townsfolk feared. She had never believed them monsters. She had seen hunger in a child's eyes, not savagery. Yet bound and bleeding, even she felt terror at the thought of warriors finding her. Her head drooped. Just as darkness threatened to swallow her, the steady thump of hooves reached her ears. A lone rider emerged, his silhouette framed by moonlight. A stranger, or a savior, was coming closer. The rider dismounted, boots crunching on dry leaves. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a trail-worn duster. His rifle glinted in the pale light. His face, shadowed beneath a wide-brimmed hat, looked hard from years of solitude. He froze when he saw her, this broken figure bound to a tree. "Damn," he muttered, rushing forward. "Who did this to you?" Eliza tried to speak, but only a rasp came. He cut her loose with his knife, catching her as she collapsed into his arms. He smelled of horse and campfire. "Easy now. I got you," he whispered with surprising gentleness. The stranger carried Eliza to his horse, wrapping her in a blanket from his saddlebag. He gave her water, holding the canteen steady as she drank with trembling lips. "Name's Daniel Boone Holt," he said quietly, his eyes steady and kind despite his ruggedness. "I got a ranch west of here. You'll be safe there." Eliza wanted to protest, to ask why he would help her, but exhaustion dragged her into silence. As the horse carried them through the moonlit prairie, she clung faintly to his coat. For the first time that day, she felt she might live. They reached Holt's ranch by dawn, a lonely cabin nestled against the rolling hills, smoke rising from a stone chimney. Daniel lifted her down, carrying her inside like she weighed nothing. The cabin was sparse but warm, filled with the scent of coffee grounds and leather. He laid her on a bed and lit a lamp. When he washed her wounds, he saw the cruel words carved into her back. Fury tightened his jaw. "Animals," he muttered. Eliza wept, ashamed. But Daniel's voice was firm. "Don't you dare bow your head. They're the ones without honor, not you." Days passed as Eliza healed under his care. Daniel fed her broth, tended her wounds, and gave her space to breathe. She learned that he had once been a soldier, a man who left war behind to find peace in the wildlands, yet loneliness haunted him. She, in turn, told him of the cruelty she faced in town, of how her own neighbors condemned her. His eyes burned at her story. "Takes courage to show kindness when the world spits on it," he said one night by the fire. "You're braver than any man I've known." But safety was fragile in the Wild West. One evening, riders appeared on the horizon. Daniel spotted them from the porch. 4 men, rifles slung over their shoulders, faces twisted with anger. He recognized one as the sheriff who'd turned blind eyes to Eliza's torment. They had come to finish what they started. Daniel's jaw hardened. He loaded his rifle, stood tall at the gate, and called out, "She's under my protection now. You want her, you'll have to ride through me." The men sneered, circling like wolves. Eliza, trembling inside the cabin, realized blood might be spilled for her. Gunfire cracked across the ranch. Daniel fired true, his soldier's aim unerring. The first rider tumbled from his horse, dust rising around him. The others returned fire, bullets splintering the corral posts. Horses screamed in panic. Eliza pressed her hands to her ears, praying desperately. Daniel reloaded calmly, every shot driving the attackers back. At last, with one man wounded and another thrown, The remaining riders retreated into the hills, cursing his name. Silence fell, broken only by the ringing in Eliza's ears. Daniel lowered his rifle, breath steady. "You're safe," he said, though his eyes still burned. That night, Eliza insisted on helping him patch his grazed arm. Her hand shook as she pressed cloth to the wound. "They'll come again," she whispered. Daniel met her gaze, his voice deep and certain. "Then we'll face them together. I won't abandon you, not ever." Tears welled in her eyes. No man had ever defended her like that. Not her neighbors, not her kin. She realized then that Daniel wasn't just a protector. He was a man who saw her worth, even when the world carved hate into her skin. For the first time, she allowed herself hope. Weeks passed, and life on the ranch became something new. Eliza worked alongside Daniel, cooking meals, mending clothes, even feeding his horses. She laughed again, the sound unfamiliar but welcome. Daniel, once silent and brooding, found himself speaking more, sharing memories of his soldier days, of comrades lost, of dreams he once buried. Together they built a fragile peace. Yet shadows lingered. At night, Eliza sometimes woke from nightmares, feeling the ropes around her wrists again. Each time Daniel was there, steady arms wrapping around her, whispering, "You're safe now, Eliza, safe." Slowly, her scars began to heal. One afternoon, a group of Comanche riders approached the ranch. Eliza stiffened, memories flashing, but Daniel raised a hand in calm greeting. Their leader dismounted, offering a pouch of dried meat. They had heard what happened, that a white woman was punished for giving food to their starving boy. In their eyes, she was not a traitor but an ally. They called her Sister of Mercy. Eliza wept at their words. For once, kindness had not been condemned but honored. Daniel, watching her smile through tears, knew that her courage had bridged two worlds that hated each other. But danger returned one last time. The sheriff and his men, ashamed of their retreat, rode back under cover of night. Torches lit, they surrounded the cabin. "Hand her over, Holt!" they shouted. Daniel pulled Eliza behind him, rifle in hand. The firelight flickered on her face, her fear stark. But she stood tall, no longer broken. "I won't hide," she whispered. Side by side, they faced the mob. Daniel's gun roared, but this time Eliza also threw burning coals from the hearth, scattering their attackers. The fight was fierce, but together they drove the men off once and for all. Morning dawned quiet, the prairie washed in gold. The sheriff lay defeated, crawling back to town in disgrace. Daniel and Eliza stood in the yard, their clothes torn but spirits unbroken. She leaned against him, her eyes shining. "You saved me," she whispered. He shook his head, brushing hair from her face. "No, Eliza, you saved yourself. I just stood by your side." Their lips met then, a kiss that carried both fire and healing, sealing the bond forged in pain, courage, and resilience. In that moment, the lonely rancher and the broken woman became something more. Family. Years later, travelers spoke of the ranch west of the cottonwoods, where a woman with scars on her back and a man with a soldier's eyes built a life together. They said she was once tied to a tree, condemned as a traitor but found freedom in love. They said he was once a lonely wanderer, but found purpose in protecting her. And when the prairie winds whispered through the cottonwoods, some swore they heard her laughter mingling with his deep voice, proof that even in the harshest Wild West, kindness and love could endure stronger than hate. The cottonwood tree stood tall, but it was no shelter, only a cruel prison. Bound against it, Eliza felt every inch of bark dig into her back, carving pain into her skin alongside the hateful words. Townsfolk had tied her there to shame, but the tree became her witness, silent yet unyielding. Under its branches, her cries rose to the night sky. What they meant as a place of punishment became a place of survival. For though her body was broken, her spirit clung to hope, and the tree in its silence carried her secret strength. Blood stained her torn dress, a dark testimony of cruelty. Each drop seemed to echo with the words carved into her flesh, "Comanche Lover." Yet blood was also life, proof that she still endured. When Daniel found her, pale but breathing, his hands trembled as he cleaned her wounds. He swore her blood would not be spilled in vain. To Eliza, her blood no longer meant shame, it became a bond. A reminder that she had suffered for kindness, and that survival was itself victory. Blood, once cruelly drawn, was now the beginning of her rebirth. The rope cut into her wrists, cruel fibers biting skin until it bled. It was meant to bind her in humiliation, but it also tethered her to life, keeping her upright when her body longed to collapse. Ropes symbolized the town's hatred, yet when Daniel drew his knife to cut her free, it became her salvation. She watched strands fall away like shackles broken. What once chained her spirit was cast aside. In the West, rope could hang or save. For Eliza, it carried both death's shadow and the spark of a second chance at freedom. The moon hung silver over the prairie, watching her suffering in silence. Its pale glow painted her wounds, her face streaked with dirt and tears. To Eliza, the moon was both comfort and cruelty. It lit her torment but also guided hope. When she heard hooves in the night, it was the moonlight that revealed Daniel's figure, riding steady and strong. That glow became a promise, light in darkness, salvation in despair. For years after, whenever she looked at the moon, she remembered that night when despair was broken by a rider who refused to pass her by. The horse's hooves struck the earth like thunder, carrying Daniel across the prairie. Strong and dark against the moon, the animal was both beast and savior. To Eliza, its presence meant escape from torment, the strength she no longer had. Lifted onto its back, she clung to Daniel's coat, feeling the rhythm of hooves carry her away from death. Horses in the West meant freedom, distance, and survival. That night, one horse bore the weight of a broken woman, a hardened man, and the fragile seed of hope galloping fast into the unknown horizon. Daniel's knife gleamed under the stars, sharp enough to cut through cruelty itself. With it, he severed the ropes biting into Eliza's wrists, each strand falling like an oath broken. That knife was more than steel, it was freedom, swift and undeniable. It had likely seen war, yet tonight it served mercy. Eliza, half-conscious, felt the relief as bonds fell, whispering a silent prayer. In a land where weapons often brought death, his blade delivered life. That knife, small in his hand, became the tool that shifted her fate, from a victim bound to a survivor carried away. The fire crackled warmly in his cabin, chasing away the cold shadows of her torment. Eliza lay wrapped in blankets, watching flames dance while Daniel stirred broth over the pot. The fire meant more than heat. It was the first comfort she had felt in days. Its glow painted safety across wooden walls, a world away from ropes and ridicule. To her, fire no longer meant destruction but healing. Its embers whispered of survival, resilience,